Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. That, of course, is Micah chapter 6, verse 8. I am your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to our final FASD Awareness Month episode of this podcast. While we are not solely a podcast about FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, it is a regular topic of conversation here at the podcast because I am a mom of two young adult sons, both diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome, adopted when they were little. And September happens to be FASD Awareness Month. So all of our episodes this month have been about FASD. And I find that most parents and professionals don't really realize just how prevalent FASD is. It is the leading cause of developmental and learning disabilities worldwide. Here in the United States, 1 in 20 school-age kids have been prenatally exposed. And I suspect, and we will be finding this out very soon, I am sure, but during COVID, drinking among women, I believe the stat I heard was increased 40%. And because there were a lot of babies born post-COVID, I believe that 1 in 20 is very conservative, and that was prior to COVID. And we could unfortunately see that those numbers really skyrocket. But even so, the conservative 1 in 20 is actually higher than autism, which is 1 in 36. And so many of our kids in foster and adoptive and kinship placements have been prenatally exposed, most not diagnosed. Most of the time, we don't necessarily know if mom was drinking. Maybe we heard she maybe did drugs or whatever the case may be. But regardless, so many of our families are struggling. And because I have that personal experience, that lived experience, struggling along on this journey for many, many, many years, I want to be a voice and offer support and encouragement in this space because I know how hard it is. And that is another reason why we talk about it all the time on this podcast, but also we're focusing on it this month. And this is the last episode for September 2024. And we're going to wrap it up with two of my most favorite people, a mother and son duo we have as guests today. But before we get to them, I want to share some of our resources, especially if you know you're raising kids who have been prenatally exposed, or maybe you want to know a little bit more about what are the symptoms? How would I know? Like what can you tell? How can you tell? We have some great resources, training and whatnot. But before I share those, I do want you to learn about our FASD support group. So check this out and I'll catch you on the other side.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphansny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphansny.org/hope-community.
All right. So again, I'm a mom. I'm on this journey with you. My boys are now 18, actually just a couple weeks away from being 19 and 21, both with fetal alcohol syndrome, both adopted. And like I said, I spent years trying to figure out what is going on. Became trauma informed, which is absolutely essential. I'm 150% behind TBRI, trust-based relational intervention, empowered to connect, all that. I use it. It has helped. But you do reach a point to where it's like, I don't know, I think we need something more. And if you find that even with connection and attachment and all of that, that something's missing, you need a little, it's like next level. FASD training is that next level training that I would say that you need, even if you're not sure. Every month, I offer a free Intro to FASD online workshop. You could sign up for one of those, learn all about the symptoms, which the symptoms of FASD, very similar to the symptoms of trauma, right? They're behavioral symptoms because the brain just works differently. But you could learn about those symptoms. And then we also focus on accommodations. What can we do? How can we better support our kiddos? And whether or not FASD is even the cause, even if it is just trauma, and I don't want to just say just trauma because that's big, the accommodations that I teach and the neurobehavioral model that I teach will work whether we are talking FASD or we're just talking trauma or other brain-based difference. So you want to check it out. Check out our free online Intro to FASD. We have some of those coming up. I've got several scheduled, several of the free 90-minute workshops. Those are the intro. And then I have an intermediate, like it goes deeper than the 90-minute intro. It's a 3-hour session. So I have several of those already scheduled on the calendar for October and November. So you can check those out on our website. In those trainings, I unpack prenatal exposure, the impact of it, the symptoms, and how to take that brain-based approach to parenting. Again, using the Facets neurobehavioral model. I do offer certificates of completion. So if you need those for your foster parent training, continuing credit hours, or if you are a social worker and you need a CEU, we have all of that. But to schedule a training and see the schedule and what's on the calendar and sign up for one of those, to sign up for the support group or parent coaching. I also schedule parent coaching sessions where I can one-on-one work with you. To check out any of those, to learn more or to sign up, you would go to our website, justicefororphansny.org. Click on the training tab at the top of the page, and in the drop-down, you will see, it'll say FASD. And if you click there, you'll find all of those resources. Now, I also have some resources over on my personal website, sandraflach.com, where I have blogged a whole series on the primary symptoms of FASD and some other things. I've got some other things that are going to be coming up there as well. So I encourage you to go over there and check that out. And don't forget, if maybe you know about this, unless you're newer to the podcast, I did a whole training through in collaboration with Focus on the Family. I did there's an article and some video modules that you can check out for free. And there's a link to that on the sandraflach.com website as well. And it may very well be in our FASD resources at the JFO site, but I know you can either way, you can find them, or you can go right to the Focus on the Family Wait No More website and you'll find it there as well. So subscribe, leave a review, do all those things that us podcasters are always asking listeners to do, because that helps us and it helps others who need to hear podcasts like this find us. We want to encourage and equip everyone on this journey. But enough of all of that. I would like to introduce you to our guests today. I'm super excited to have with us Debbie Raymond and her son, Wyatt York. They are a passionate mom and son team of FASD advocators living in southeastern Washington state. Debbie is a single mom of 2 adopted children. Lydia is now 27 and neurotypical, and Wyatt, now 23, who has, he's on the FASD, the Fetal Alcohol Spectrum. Wyatt graduated high school in 2020 and is a volunteer dog handler and trainer and a part-time greeter and clerk at a local market. He enjoys photography, and he's been known to be pretty good on the hip hop dance floor. And Deb is a freelance writer and a moderator in Jeff Noble's FASD Success Group. She also facilitates online FASD support groups, including one for young adults with FASD, as well as, and this is my favorite, she co-leads with me Hope for the FASD Journey, and she is a valued voice of support. So please welcome back Debbie Raymond, and welcome for the first time, Wyatt York. Hey, guys.
Hi, Sandra.
Hello.
Hello. I am so excited. Thank you so much for joining us today for our last episode for FASD Awareness Month. Deb, you've been on this podcast before, but this is the first time we've had the honor of having Wyatt. So I'm so happy to have you here, Wyatt.
Yep.
So, and I love the two of you cuddled up on the couch there way out in Washington. So, but I want to start with Mom. I'll start with Deb because, not all of our listeners may be familiar with your story. So let's just, we'll just talk a little bit about adopting Wyatt, bringing him home. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Oh, gosh. How far back do you want me to go? I mean, just his adoption story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Whatever
Well,
you want to share.
yeah, I have a daughter that I adopted from, both my kids come from Asian countries. Lydia, my daughter, who's neurotypical, she just turned 27. She's from China, South China, and Wyatt is from South Korea. And so when Lydia was about 2, we had moved to Eastern Washington from the west side, and a little town called Zilla. And Lydia was very advanced and very verbal for her age. And she was like running through the house and, Mom, I need a baby brother, kind of thing. And we hadn't really thought about it, because the process, I had had 4 miscarriages at least, and, and then some failed adoptions, and going through, adoption with a birth mom here in the Tri-Cities, actually, that, it's rather ironic how God plans things out and does things in your life, because there was probably alcohol exposure, and we didn't want to do anything with that. But so with my husband and I at the time, we just started praying about it and thinking about it and looking at financially if we could do another child, and because it's fairly expensive to adopt internationally, and we realized the answers just kept coming that we really did want to have another child, and God opened those doors for us to another agency, and Wyatt's match actually came really quickly, because a lot of people don't realize you can get boys from Asian countries, and there's so much misinformation in Western culture about all of that. Anyway, another story, but so just like with my daughter, I actually met both of my children at airports. So I have this love for airports and cry at the airport. But he was escorted. We didn't have to go to South Korea by a woman. And Wyatt lived actually with a foster family, which I thought was a really neat thing they do. And his birth mom had him in a place where, she was drug and alcohol free, but she was like 4 months along before she realized she was pregnant. So, that's where the alcohol exposure came in for him. But but anyway, they had a huge ceremony for him, and I have those pictures in his baby book, and he was very loved and cared for. And you know, different people from our church and other people were at the airport with us and got to meet him. And I have this one picture of me and Lydia sitting in a chair, and I'm just, tears streaming down my face. But Wyatt was always just a really happy baby. I mean, Lydia just adored him. He didn't talk early or anything because she kept saying to me, Mom, I speak Wyatt. He doesn't have to speak. And she was like his little mother, and she'd take him from the couch and lay him on the floor. She'd like drag him like a cat, almost. And she was just, mother handing him on the floor and playing with him and doing all this stuff. But it was like, when we picked him up, it was like, I just looked up at the heavens and, and I, in my tears, and I now I'm going to cry, and said, thank you, God, because I knew our family was complete. So,
I love that. Now, how old?
Wyatt was only like 4.5, 5 months old when we got him.
Okay. So very much a baby still.
Yeah.
And did you know at that point that there'd been prenatal exposure?
No, we had no idea.
No idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then what was the journey like as he grew? Were there symptoms? What we know that there are behavioral symptoms. So now they were symptoms, but what was going on back then that maybe you didn't realize, but now they're symptoms?
Well, the first thing that I noticed wasn't any, delays in development or anything. It was that he drooled like crazy. And that was, his comorbid condition with his teeth. When he was 2 years old, he fell on the playground. We lived right near an elementary school and used to go there all the time. And he was running, and he ran everywhere. He went straight from crawling to running everywhere. And didn't want to miss anything anyway. And his teeth were just rotten underneath. So he had his first like major surgery when he was 2. They had to scrape his gum line down and cap most of his teeth to save, the permanent teeth underneath. And so that was the first thing. But at the time, I didn't know that that's what it was. I just knew that there were dental issues, and we didn't have any records, from his bio mom or anything like that on that kind of care. So we had no clue. And then probably, about the time he was in kindergarten and I was volunteering in his classroom, and the teacher, he had a male teacher, and it was his first year of teaching. God love him. He tried his best, but he wasn't the best kindergarten teacher for a bunch of busy little kids. But he would send the kids outside to me. And, one of my minors is in special education, and I've worked with kids for a long time. So the kids would read to me outside, in a quiet space. And that was when I first started noticing, some of Wyatt's delays. He wasn't, where the other kids were with reading and different things. And again, I didn't really notice it sooner because Lydia was like, really advanced, and she would talk for him and do for him. And he was busy, and he played, and he slept well and did all the other things, and didn't eat well because of the teeth issues. But I didn't realize at the time it was probably sensory issues too. So those were the first things I noticed. And then again, as he progressed into school, we ended up moving from Zillah to Prosser, first grade, because that's when we had to leave my marriage, and there was, not good situation there. And he had to repeat, first grade, and I got called in, and he was put into specialist classes and for speech and all the things. And excuse me. And, they just basically said he needs an IEP, and he, this is where he falls within these things. And then too, my kids being Asian, like at the doctor, they were like 25th percentile or something like that. And I'm like, well, let's not use a big white kid baby's chart, just use a chart. But anyway, so those were really, when I noticed things were, starting school, and I just wanted to get him the help that he needed. I didn't know to what extent that would involve, and the journey we would take after that. But I am so grateful that we moved to Prosser, and my mom worked for the school district, and I knew a lot of the people already just from being in the town, and doing some volunteer work with my mom. So, I was on a first name basis with his principal and a lot of the teachers and stuff. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. So what was going on that led to eventually a diagnosis? How old was Wyatt when he got diagnosed, and what kind of got you on that track?
Well, he wasn't diagnosed until he was 19, almost 20, despite the
Wow.
fact that he had facial features, and those some have somewhat faded. But around middle school, because that's where, it becomes really hard, things that are more abstract and all that become more concrete, and they're expected to be in all these different classrooms and do all these things. And even before then, when he was in scouts, we had a wonderful scout leader, but he went off to a scouting event one weekend, and I will never forget this. He would not shower or bathe, the whole time he was there. And I know now that was a sensory issue for him. But when we got there, I arrived, and he had won his ribbon for shooting the 22, and that was kind of a neat thing for me because I was a pro marksman in 4-H and won some awards with that, and I had no clue that he had that gift. We'd never shot with him at home, and didn't do that. And despite the fact that my former husband, their dad, was in the military and stuff, we just didn't, because we were concerned about safety and stuff in a little town and all that. So anyway, but as I said, to backtrack, about middle school too, I really saw the distance and the gap between him and some of the other kids. He always wanted to please and tried his hardest. I'm sure he was masking like crazy all through school.
Mhm.
But there were some elopement from classes a couple of times in middle school because he just was overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And and I'd get called because usually I was working at his school because I was a paraeducator at that time. And so all through, from that time, then into high school, I had gone back to college and became a long-term substitute teacher. So again, a lot of times I was either his teacher or in a classroom nearby. And I just kept telling I had read Diane Malbin's book, and I knew, and I actually sent it to my mom, and she said he has fetal alcohol, and I said, yeah, he does. And so from that point on, from the time of, uh, you know, very, 10, 11, whatever, until he was 19, almost 20, I kept, trying to get a diagnosis for him. And Children's Hospital, where I took him to, excuse me, I need a sip of water. They would not give him a diagnosis despite the fact that, he has facial features. And
Yeah,
I,
we know
I
it's
was,
so hard to get that diagnosis.
yeah, I was really rather disappointed. And then, excuse me, I don't even remember how it came about. Somehow I got connected to the UW FAS clinic. I think, yeah, I was on the board for something and got connected to them. Sorry, I'm trying to remember all the connections here, but obviously God placed me in those places, to get those connections to get there. But once it was during COVID too, so we couldn't go to the clinic. I had to measure his facial features and all the things, and send, oh my gosh, a volume, stacks of paperwork from Children's Hospital, from his regular doctor, from school, all the things. And thankfully, you know, um, they had reviewed his stuff, and then did a Zoom meeting with both Wyatt and I, and they wanted him to be present. And he was diagnosed in September of 2020, I think. So 4 years ago.
Wow.
So
Wow.
is it 2019? No, it was 2020. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
So,
you're 23 now. So yeah, you were 19.
yeah. So just for our listeners, because I know you mentioned Diane Melvin's book. So that is the famous purple book in the circles of FASD. And it is called Trying Differently Rather Than Harder, written by an adopted mom and social worker, Diane Melvin. And I highly recommend it. I know Deb and I both highly recommend that book. However, if you haven't read it yet, or even if you have, there is a new edition coming out, and I believe it'll be available probably December. It'll probably have a dark purple cover. I think it's the 4th edition, I want to say. But to get the most recent updated edition, wait till December to order it if you're going to order it. If you already have it, I would highly recommend getting the updated version, because you're going to see some great improvements and updated language and whatnot. But I just kind of want to, you mentioned Diane Melvin, and then I wanted to make sure our listeners knew what book we were talking about. So I know moms can talk forever, right, Wyatt? So we're going to get to you. I have a question for you. Mom was talking about some of the challenges in school. What do you remember, and can you explain what it was like for you in school? Was it hard, frustrating? How was it for you?
I think it was hard at first, but then when my mom subbed, it got easier. Yeah. I kind of just like school in general, I think.
You liked it?
Yeah, I love school. It was really fun.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
But having mom there probably was helpful because she understood what you needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I saw a significant change when I, became mama bear and really fought for the supports he needed, and, an educational assistant for him, and just all the things. He had one. Sorry, I don't know where this tickle came from, but it was like one that was shared with like 5 other students, and he never did have an individual one, but usually Karen was only just between you and one other student.
Yeah.
And then his teachers would like print out PowerPoints and, modified what was required of him, and, for tests, they could be read to him, just all the things that were helpful to him. And and living in a small community, I was able to do that. And, some of those teachers were friends. They'd been to our house for dinner. We went to church together. So.
So that was school, and definitely you saw, you were well supported. So it was a positive experience, it sounds like. What is it like today? Because now you're a young adult. Can you describe what it's like having an FASD?
I don't know. I think sometimes it can be fun,
Well, you have wonderful strengths. I know that you are gifted with working with dogs, and
yeah.
Tell her about yesterday.
Oh, yesterday I went to a private school and took therapy dogs to them.
Oh, so good. Because I've seen your videos you post on social media when you're working with the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So you are an incredible dog trainer, right? And so I think, and you love animals, you love dogs.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Yeah.
Horses.
Yeah.
Horses, because you do the equine therapy, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And you like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And tomorrow is my 2-year mark at my job.
Yes, tell us about, because you work at a market, a grocery store, right?
Yeah.
What things do you get to do there?
Well, I used to be a courtesy, but now I'm not really a courtesy anymore. So either I help out with freight, or walk around the store and see if any of the customers need help.
Nice. And do you enjoy that job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Courtesy was fun. It's just I like being a greeter and so I'm walking in the store. So I kind of switched my position.
Yeah.
And explain why that came about, honey.
It was just my myalgia. It was just really hard staying there for hours and hours and hours bagging. And it was,
So fibromyalgia, so that's a co-concurring condition, Deb?
Yeah. It's like one of his comorbid conditions. He was diagnosed last fall after he collapsed, and his work has been just wonderful about that. As Wyatt said, they've modified his work environment and his hours, and are so supportive, and as all employers should be. And he's got a great crew. I
Yep.
mean, I walk into the store and they, want to make sure I'm okay too, so.
Yep, all the courtesies, all the cashiers, all the managers, even the new people, they all know my mom. Like when there's a new people in there, she tries to go to them and introduce her and say, yeah,
Well, I want them, with Wyatt's permission, I share a little bit more all the time about, his FASD and what his supports needs are. And even when I go in and like I buy fish and in the little fish market there, the gal that works in the fish department, she's like, "Oh, I just love Wyatt,"
Mm.
and so I feel so good as a mom that he's blessed to have that kind of an environment, where he's not only revered and stuff and gets the confidence and to do a good job there for them, but he is protected too and sheltered, because he did have a customer like yell at him one day and he didn't even notice it, but like the manager was behind him and like looked at the guy and the guy ran out of the store like, "Don't you mess with our Wyatt,"
Aw. Well, this triggered a question I wasn't planning on asking, but when you mentioned the comorbidities, because I believe it's 428
428, yeah.
co-concurring health conditions or comorbid conditions that are highly prevalent among people with an FASD. And so for our listeners, you can Google that, right? And you can, 428 comorbidities and FASD and see a whole scientific article. It's pretty eye-opening because it can be anything from, vision problems and hearing problems and autoimmune conditions and diabetes and musculoskeletal conditions. I know, one of my boys has vision problems. One of them has musculoskeletal problems, challenges, the severe scoliosis, things like that. So these things are just more prevalent among the population of people with FASD. So that is certainly something we want to let our listeners know, because if your kiddos or one of your kiddos has some other health conditions, it can be associated with FASD as well. So we want them to know about that.
Yeah.
Wyatt,
and
go
he
ahead.
He does have other conditions. He has in both feet extra bones. So like today I got a referral for him to see his podiatrist again because he wears orthotics. He has sensory processing issues, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. He's like hyperextends his joints are really, he can hyperextend himself. Fibromyalgia. Thank God he doesn't have hearing or, vision issues, because I don't know where we'd put it on his little nose.
Yeah.
But the fibromyalgia was a new diagnosis last fall. He just had surgery for another condition, which impacted his bladder and some different things, but thank God that's, healed and such. But yeah, I mean, there can be so many different things and like with Wyatt, he has such a high pain tolerance and threshold that a lot of times it's like, and he has asthma too. He will be in pain and not tell me until it's like, a 20 on a scale from 1 to 10,
And cyst, don't forget that.
Oh yeah, and he has a cyst in his brain too that's inoperable. And like if we fly or do anything, the cabin pressure, sometimes it makes it really painful for him. So we have to, like take Tylenol, ibuprofen, try to plan around it, ice packs, from the flight attendants, that kind of thing to try to minimize it. And it's gotten better over the years, but it used to be really hard when he was younger. He would just scream in the cabin. We'd take gum and, hard candy and different things, to try to help with it. So
Wow.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Sandra. Sorry.
Yeah, no, lots of things going on. And I know that would be, maybe very eye-opening for our listeners, because we don't always talk about the comorbidities, but it's highly prevalent, these things, among people who've been prenatally exposed. So it's important for parents and caregivers to know that. Wyatt, is there anything else you'd want to share about what it's like living with FASD? Like, what is something that's really hard for you?
Probably whenever I smack my head when my cyst is, it just like hurts a lot. So if you have a cyst in your brain, yeah, try not to hit your head. It
Yeah, that
doesn't
would
hurt.
hurt.
It only hurts right here. That's what my
Okay.
cyst is right there. But so yeah, just protect your head if you have a cyst in your brain or something because it really does hurt. Especially when I took that toe down the stairs and smacked my head. That
Yeah.
my cyst was like my head was like on fire and it really hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We were
yeah,
praying for you. Our group,
yeah.
our support group, we were praying for you. So we're glad that you're okay from that now. Your mom mentioned sensory. So is it like loud noises, bright lights? What kinds of things bother you?
Um, I think I'm really good now, but like I remember when the train used to go by my grandma and grandpa's house when I lived in Prosser, that used to just drive me crazy. But now I can hear a train, and I'm like, no big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're older now and it's not doesn't bother you as much.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
he's
if,
both a sensory seeker and avoider, I have seen. So,
yeah, it's interesting because my son Slava is both.
mhm,
Right. So he doesn't like, he's going to be 19 and he doesn't like loud noises, like crowded places where there's lots of people talking,
mhm,
or like the fire alarm at school really upsets him.
yeah.
But yet he craves deep pressure touch, and he can make loud noises. Like he'll play music loud on purpose and he likes
Mhm,
that, but he
mhm,
doesn't, he doesn't like it in other places. So it's interesting how it's not like a straight across the board
mhm.
thing. Um, what about, like, I know Deb, we talk a lot about like slow processing pace, where there's, if a lot of words, spoken words, our kids have a hard time catching all of those spoken words.
Mhm.
Is that still hard?
I I think it really depends on the time. If Wyatt is tired, at the end of the day after work, it would be harder for him to process that. Early in the day when he's rested and all that, it's pretty easy for him. But I've noticed, and I don't know, and I want to share this because it may impact other kids as well. Wyatt has always had like a trauma response with anesthesia, and he's had several surgeries. And I noticed with the surgery he had in July, he's been had a lot more lapses of memory.
Mm.
He takes his bedtime pills and they're in one of those, pill reminder things. And I've had, maybe a half a dozen nights where I've had to wake him up and hand him his pills and a glass of water because even though I set him out in the bathroom, he forgot to take them. And
Mhm.
so I think that he's still getting the anesthesia out of his system because he's forgotten to do that. Um, And we have like a protocol too that we follow. They dim the lights, post surgery for him. He has a weighted blanket or his vest on. Um, you know, like you said, he likes compression, a heated blanket or a weighted blanket. Not too many people talking. He wants me to be there, a weighted stuffed animal or something for security, just so that, he feels safe waking up and, in that environment.
Yeah. So what, Deb, how did you learn? Because you're an FASD expert in my book. How did you really learn about FASD after Wyatt's diagnosis, and get equipped or trained to be able to better support your son?
Well, I'm a moderator in Jeff Noble's group, and before I was a moderator, I had found his group, um, and I took his FASD success training program, and I actually redo that every year. It's part of being a moderator. It's one of the benefits we get. But it was like after reading Diane Malbin's book and then just all the other books that I've read, it was like so many aha moments for me because he
Mhm.
has coaching calls and we have sessions like like you have where we have support. I just didn't feel alone anymore, and there were other people, sharing the same kind of things that their kids had. And Canada is ahead of us in education and learning and stuff in relation to FASD. So it was the perfect thing for me to learn, and then from there I took, the facets neurobehavioral model training with you and our friend Lindsay, and and met people there. And I just every year I've taken Proof Con from Proof Alliance, who I used to do some work for and have a support group with. And so every time I get a chance to do anything, educational with FASD, I take that training, because, I want to know everything that I can to help not only support my child, but anybody else, any other family that I may be able to come alongside and help, and, I mean, hopefully
Yeah.
ease their burden a little bit
Mhm.
and celebrate the strengths and, all the good things that our kids bring as well.
Yeah. So Wyatt, what is one way your mom helps you?
She helps me in a lot of ways. Probably reminders sometimes. Like this morning, I saw her brush her teeth, and I got her toothbrush out again.
It was really funny. He sat there and watched me brush my teeth because we were leaving to go somewhere. And then I walked back into the bathroom. I don't even know what for. And I said, "Why is my toothbrush back out?" And he just started laughing and he said, "I forgot, Mom."
Aw, so she gives you reminders. Anything else? Anything else you can share? You said she does a lot, so anything you
Mm,
think of?
What about your money and those kind of things?
She helps me manage my money.
Yeah. Do you have a schedule? Has she helped you set up a schedule?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. She's a big help, huh?
hmm
Yeah. Yeah. Deb, so what I know you've shared lots in our group, different suggestions and strategies to provide accommodations for our kids. So what are some of those accommodations that you've apply at home to support Wyatt?
Well, the first thing is, FASD doesn't define our kids. And I think it's really important that, we love them for who they are and, know that God created them as they are and that they have, strength and a purpose like we all do. But I first and foremost, I think brain, um, you know, because his brain is wired differently than mine is. And, and I try to support it from that standpoint. And I don't always do it right because, I'm a human. I have free will. I have bad
Yeah.
days. I get tired. I have moments where I fail, but I have a counselor, I do self-care, I do all those things for me so that I can best accommodate him. And, as he said, we have a schedule, we have a notebook that I've created with his entire schedule in it. He has a whiteboard and a whiteboard with steps. Sometimes I put extra like post-it notes on things because he has been a little bit more forgetful lately. When he was in school, I would put notes in his lunch bag and stuff in his backpack. Um, we set timers on the Alexa in our home, like it's really hard for him to remember when he should eat and drink. He never knows when he's hungry or thirsty, so we set those timers. And I do also remind him physically, say, "Honey, did you drink your water?" Or to make sure he takes it, his flask with him when we go somewhere. Because of his, mobility challenges now with his fibromyalgia, I do, sometimes need to, actually take him by the hand and walk with him, because he's, a little wobbly on his feet. Um, anything that he needs. And all of us have needs. He does things for me that I can't do. We work as a team. I can't because I have, two titanium hips. I've had hip replacement 2 times. He shovels this, the snow when I need him to, and he picks up the yard for the dog waste and, and he gets everything out for every meal that we have and sets the table and, so we work together and it's been a really good thing for, both of us actually, because he has given me my purpose.
Mm.
I've always worked with kids and loved working with kids and he has this infectious smile, which he's not giving me right now, but he always tries hard. He always tries his best. You know, he said he liked school, and he was well loved at school. Wyatt used to be a hip hop dancer, but had to give that up because you know, of his fibromyalgia and his joint pain, and that was before we knew that was what was going on. And you know, everybody loved Wyatt. I mean, and who wouldn't love a kid that always did their best and smiled? And you know, he was asked to be in leadership at school, and you know, he just, you know, I love helping him because I want him, you know, to share his gifts and to be everything that he can be, you know.
I love that. You mentioned a little bit ago about reminding him to eat and drink because he doesn't necessarily recognize hunger and thirst. And that is one of the primary symptoms with FASD, where there can be nutritional problems, which can look like an individual not recognizing that they're hungry or thirsty. And also on the flip side, it could be not recognizing that they're full. So then they're eating
Too much.
large amounts of food. Now, not to be confused with, there's a lot of kids who've come to us through adoption, foster care, who've experienced, you know, food insecurity. So they might hoard food or hide food or whatever, because they're used to going, you know, they have experienced not having enough. But this is different than that. This is just, you know, eating all the time. And it's really, I guess I would say physiological, right? That the brain and the gut do not, that message doesn't get sent that, oh, we're full, stop eating now, or you're hungry, you need to eat. So those can be very real parts of FASD, as well as those sugar cravings, intense sugar. Like one of my boys would rather drink sugary beverages than eat even food. So we have to make sure that he's taking in food, because we can't just live on sugary beverages. So
I have a coworker who says who tries his best to watch over my sugar, and he does a good job. He teased me. He's like, Wyatt, I'm gonna bring you some vegetables and you're gonna love it. And I'm like, you are not going to do such thing. But I've been getting better about my sugar, but it still needs work. I've been trying to.
And you realize it's part of one of your symptoms with impulse control. Yeah. I was really proud of him. One day he wrote on his calendar more than once, you know, bought sweets at work to try to remind himself that he didn't need to buy sweets, you know, again so soon.
Yeah, it's hard because, you know, I like sweets too. So I have to try to control my craving for sweets. So I think a lot of people, you know, with or without FASD can struggle with that. But the remembering that we've had the sweets enough, or the impulse control because we really want them.
Or you don't need to put like 3 king size candy bars in your bag, only like 1 or 2.
Right.
My mom has checked my foodie bag and there's been a whole bag of candy. She's like, Wyatt, 1 or 2 is fine, but not like I've had like 3 in there at a time before.
Wow.
It's just like, wow.
And the giant ones, not just the small ones.
Yeah, the king size ones.
And I ask his permission before I do that. I say, honey, I want to help you with your impulse control. Can you show me, or can I look and see what candy you have in your bag? And so he does, because he knows that I'm trying to help him, you know.
What's your favorite candy bar?
I really like caramel and chocolate. So or maybe like a peppermint patty. I love peppermint patties.
Yeah. I like chocolate too. So I think my favorite is peanut butter cups.
They were probably his favorite before, but now he has another condition. He's nut allergic.
Yeah, that's a bummer. But chocolate, anything chocolate, especially I do like the chocolate and the caramel. So I'm with you on that. But we digress, right?
Yeah.
So Deb, what as a parent, right, of a young adult, what would you say are important steps for the parents who are listening to us and are thinking, you know, maybe they know they have a kiddo with FASD, or maybe they're just not sure, but you know, what can parents do if they know or suspect they have a kiddo that was prenatally exposed?
Well, read Diane Malvin's book, you know, find community. You know, we have a great community in our Hope for the FASD Journey group. Jeff Noble's group is great. You really need community. You need other people that are going through life like you. Try to get a diagnosis if you can. FASD United has a lot of resources around the country where you can get a diagnosis. Unfortunately, a lot of people can't, but even if you can't get that diagnosis, please parent your child from a brain-based, um, component, and understand that, developmentally, they're going to probably be about half their chronological age. Understand that, there's going to be a lot of things that may be challenging for you, but I would really encourage you, to look for those strengths, and you can't start too soon with any of this. Look for those strengths, celebrate everything that they do together. I mean, we're silly a lot. I mean, Wyatt and I, we have a side of silly for breakfast or lunch, or excuse me, and we dance around the house together. We sing in the car together. Wyatt's got a favorite Jeremy Camp song right now that he sings in the car, and work with them, age appropriate, ask them, get curious about the things they like to do, figure out what they like to do, build on those strengths, and then, just create an environment that fits them, that is right for them, not what society expects for them.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of creating environments, you have your job, Wyatt, and you really enjoy that. So are there accommodations that your boss, your employer, has put into place to help support you at work?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are some of those?
Well, some of them are, whenever they have paperwork or something, that they always text my mom, or they say, okay, they write a sticky note on what it's for, and I hand my mom. They also have, due to my fibromyalgia, they've switched me to a greeter and walking around the store to see if any customers need help. So yeah, my boss is great.
That is great. I know my son Slava got a job over the summer back in August. We didn't go out looking for a job, but they offered him a job at a little restaurant nearby. And he's washing dishes, which interestingly is something I didn't know he knew how to do, because he doesn't like to wash them at home. But he's getting some wonderful support from his boss there. She created some simple scripts and typed up and printed off the steps that he needs to remember to do, because when it would get really busy, he would rush because he would feel like he was behind and he'd get stressed out, and then he would forget some of the steps that he needed to do. So he's getting some wonderful support there. And that's one of the things that I feel like, Deb, you mentioned it. We need to, it's not so much forcing the individual to fit into the environment, but we need to make sure that the environment fits the individual. So just like any disability, if you have an individual in a wheelchair, they have wheelchair ramps and elevators and modified restrooms and all of those things to support an individual with a disability that we can see. But when we have a brain difference, which is really invisible, we need to make sure that we are also providing accommodations for the individual as well. So I'm thrilled, Wyatt, that you're getting that support at work. My son's getting that support at work, but at work, at school, at home, out in the community, we need to see more of that. That is great.
Yeah, and there's other ones too, like when he was diagnosed with his nut allergy, he wears, they gave him a box of those, gloves like that they wear in the doctor's office too. And all the cashiers now, if there's nuts, they grab them for Wyatt, so he doesn't have to touch those things. Like the HR person will call me, if Wyatt missed something on his timesheet or something, they write little Post-it notes, like he said, and really small, little succinct, 3-4 word steps of things, so that he has it visually too on a Post-it note and he can understand.
Yeah, I love that. Gotta provide those accommodations and supports, right? Deb, I know you mentioned the support group earlier, and because this can be such an isolating journey for parents and caregivers, What has our group, the Hope for the FASD Journey support group, what has that meant to you?
Well, as you know, I was invited as a VIP guest, a year and a half ago. And then you guys didn't let me leave. And I didn't want to leave. It was just, despite the fact that I'm a part of a larger support group and all of that, the intimacy and the level, of care and love that we have for each other in our group has just been something that really feeds me. And, we pray together and we, share together and we offer each other, advice about kids and, we all brainstorm and come up with, things that have worked for us, or we just, like last week when you were gone to CAFO, I mean, we just kind of sat around and shared with each other and it was just that what we needed. It was kind of like we were sitting around having a cup of tea or coffee together and just, sharing our lives with each other. And, we just really needed that.
I love that because I too look forward to our group because no one, unless you're on this journey, this parenting journey, nobody else really gets it.
Mm-mm.
And to be able to link up, link arms with the
Mhm.
other, it's mostly moms, but we do have a dad on there occasionally because it's all parents are invited.
Mhm.
But to be able to just know that even if we don't have answers, we just can sit together and it's safe and we can, share our heart and pour out our heart and pray for one another. And we have the private Facebook group that goes along with it where we can put prayer requests. And then we do you tag team with me to do those Soul Care Saturday video devotionals. We take turns. And that's always posted on Saturdays in the group. But it's such a wonderful, encouraging group. We just love, I love it. And yeah, we had you on as a guest and never let you leave because you're such a valuable, important voice in this space. So I'm grateful
Thank
for your
you.
friendship and grateful for the support you provide there. So
Well, vice versa, Sandra. And even Wyatt, he listens, a lot of times. And I mean, I know he has contributed a couple of times and he likes listening to what we're talking about too. I think it's helpful for you. Have
Yeah.
you found it to be helpful for you?
Yeah. Sorry, our big yellow sweet lab named Silk is coming over here for me to pet her.
will
She
you go
feels she feels left out, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Aw. Well, I have what is my doggie? She's a Woodle. So
Poodle, yeah.
she is part Wheaton Terrier and part Poodle. And her name is Liberty. And she just loves her people. And I was gone for a week and I was really missing her. So she's pretty glad I'm home now. But
Yeah.
yeah, we love our puppies. Wyatt, what are your dreams for the future? Is there something you have that you would love to do?
Probably just continue my dog stuff. Yep. And continue whenever I have time to do my dog photography. I like taking pictures of dogs a lot.
Oh,
And
Yeah, you didn't share about your photography.
probably just continue all the stuff I do.
yeah, that is awesome. What would you like for parents who are listening? Maybe they're just learning about FASD. Maybe they have kiddos with an FASD. What would you like to say to them, the parents?
Um,
I liked what you said before about it not defining you. Do you like that?
yeah, FASD does not define the individual, and you got this.
You got this.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So, Deb, as we wrap up, what most of our listeners are adoptive and foster parents, moms, especially. Many of us caring for kids with an FASD or at the very least trauma. Not that that's a least thing, that's a huge thing. Would you share some words of encouragement for the parents and caregivers listening?
Yeah. I would tell you that it may be a hard journey, but God has placed these children with you for a reason and put them in your care, and they need your strength and your willingness to advocate for them. We aren't our children's voices, we're their microphones, is what I like to say. bolster them, encourage them, love them for who they are, not for what they aren't able to do. And find that community, wherever it is, in a group like ours or whatever, and continue to educate yourself, but also make sure you take time for yourself. Self-care is essential. And I don't just mean, hiding in the bathroom and, whatever. You know, create community around you so that you can take, a weekend away or get time away, because you can't fill your kids' cups up if your cup is not filled yourself. So
Yeah, that is so, so true. So before we go, any last thoughts from either one of you? Something you want to make sure that our listeners hear?
well, this was something that I shared, from our friend Natalie. I always like to tell people that there's always hope, and hope is a good thing, and hope never dies. So never forget that there's always hope.
Mm. What about you, Wyatt? Any last words?
Mm.
No? Thank you for coming on and being brave, and for sharing your story, and for all that you're doing, and keep doing your dog photography and training those dogs and all that hard work that you're doing, and just continue to be that smiling face for the FASD community. Thank you both for sharing your story today and for being on the show.
Oh, our pleasure. It's been wonderful to talk to you, and hopefully something that we shared might, benefit some families out there. So,
well, I know I'm always blessed by our conversation. So thank you so much for being on today.
oh, you're welcome.
Wow. Wasn't that such a great conversation with Deb and her son, Wyatt? He's such an amazing young man. And I hope you really were able to enjoy our conversation. If you listen to, or if you're interested in listening to or watching your podcast, obviously you're listening if you were listening to the podcast, but we also post the video for these episodes on our YouTube channel. It is the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel, and all of our podcasts, the videos, are posted there each week. So if you would like to see and watch my conversation with Deb and Wyatt, you can go to YouTube to check that out. We want to encourage you and equip you for this parenting journey. Again, I'm a mom. I've got over 20 years of lived experience. My youngest two, 19 and 21, are both diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. I know how hard this journey can be, and want to provide you with resources that I didn't have in the early days when my boys we got a diagnosis of fetal alcohol syndrome, but the developmental pediatrician handed us a pamphlet on ADHD and said, have a nice day. And it was like, there was nothing. And it took years before we realized, when our boys were high school age, teenagers, even before high school, things got a lot harder, and we had connection and we had attachment and we had built trust, but there was definitely things that were getting harder instead of easier. And we began to realize this is that FASD thing, and we need to understand more. We need some training. We need to be better equipped for this particular journey. So that is why we talk about FASD so much on this podcast. And it is why I offer the parent coaching and the online and in-person training workshops and parent coaching. So if you're interested in any of those resources, you can sign up, learn more, register at our website, justicefororphansny.org. You can click the training tab again at the top of the page and look for the FASD, and all those resources will be there. Of course, there is a link in the show notes for this episode. If you want to scroll down, there's a link right to our website. I'll include a link to FASD United. We are an affiliate of FASD United, and no matter what state you are in the United States, you can go to fasdunited.org and click on their Family Navigators button, and you can fill out some information, and a real live person will get back to you. They're usually a parent of kiddos with FASD, and they will be able to refer you to some resources specific to the state that you live in. And they are constantly learning about those resources and updating all of their information so that they have lots of details to give you depending on what state that you are in. So you can go there. And also Diane Melvin's book, again, Trying Differently Rather Than Harder. That is the go-to resource book for FASD. There's a lot of other great ones out there, but that is the one that really, I've heard people say it's the Bible for FASD, right? So that is an excellent resource. It is going to be updated. The most recent updated edition should be available by or around December 2024. So if you haven't gotten it yet, again, you want to wait until then to get it. So that way you get the most updated version. And of course, the, let's see, what else do I want to put in there? Most updated version. And yeah, it's a great resource. So we've got lots of resources listed on our website. So you want to check that out. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans. I myself, Sandra Flach, am on both of those platforms as well. I would love to be connected with you. So make sure you check that out. And again, thank you so much. I'm grateful that you spent your valuable time with me today. I'm thrilled to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans. And check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.